My best friend of 17 years asked me to be the godfather of his son. 3 months later, I found out the son was mine. I didn't confront him. I didn't throw a punch. I just started making phone calls. I'm a forensic accountant. I spend my days finding the numbers people try to hide. Offshore accounts, falsified invoices, paper trails that loop back on themselves, and eventually always lead somewhere. I understand how people cover things up. I understand the exact moment a cover-up starts to unravel. I should have turned those skills on my own life sooner. My wife's name is Petra. We met at a charity 5K in Denver when we were both 26, both terrible runners, both stopping to walk at the same hill. We got coffee after. We got married 3 years later in a barn outside Fort Collins with 30 people, and a playlist we spent 6 months building together. My best friend, Cormac, was my best man. He'd been my best friend since freshman year of college. Roommates junior and senior year. He was in the front row at my wedding, tearing up before I did. We were the kind of friends who had a stancing Thursday dinner, alternated houses, knew each other's parents by first name. When his marriage ended in year 2, I was the one who helped him move out. When Petra and I had our son, Leo, Cormac was the first person we called. He was there the night Leo was born. In the waiting room. Brought terrible gas station flowers because it was the only place open at 2 a.m. That's the kind of guy he was. That's what I thought. Leo is 5 now. He has my mother's eyes and my father's jaw, and this laugh that sounds exactly like. I stopped thinking about that when the test results came back. It started with a physical routine stuff. I turned 37 in October, so my doctor added some panels I hadn't had before. One of them flagged something minor, nothing serious. Just a marker that required follow-up blood work. During that appointment, the doctor mentioned it could indicate a hereditary component. Asked about family history. I told him what I knew. He pulled up Leo's pediatric records, same practice, and said, almost as an aside, that the marker wasn't present in Leo's blood work from his last checkup. That's unusual, he said. If it's hereditary and you carry it, there's a meaningful chance. He stopped himself, looked at me. Would you want to do a paternity panel, just for medical completeness? I said sure. The way you say sure to something you're not worried about. The way you say sure when the answer is so obvious the question feels almost insulting. The results came back on a Tuesday. I was at my desk eating a sandwich. I read the report 3 times. Probability of biological paternity, 0.0%. I sat there for a long moment. Then I put the sandwich down and opened a new spreadsheet. Old habits. I didn't call Petra. I didn't call Cormac. I thought about what I do for a living. I find things. I follow money and documentations and timestamps until a complete picture assembles itself. I decided to do that first and feel things later. I took 2 days of PTO and spent them building a timeline. Went back through phone records, credit card statements, our shared calendar. Nothing jumped out immediately, which wasn't surprising. Cormac and Petra had always been in the same social circle. Overlapping dinners, overlapping events. It was easy to miss. Then I found a hotel charge. 4 years ago, the weekend of my firm's regional conference in Chicago. I'd been gone 3 nights. The charge was from a boutique hotel in Denver. Not Cormac's address. Not anywhere either of them had mentioned. I cross-referenced Cormac's Venmo from around that time, which he'd never made private. A payment to a restaurant near that hotel, 2 days before Leo was born, 9 months prior. I sat back in my chair and felt the math complete itself. 9 months prior to Leo's birthday. The conference weekend. A hotel 3 miles from our house that neither of them had any explained reason to be at. I thought about Leo. Asleep down the hall, toes sticking out from his dinosaur blanket, completely untouched by any of this. 5 years old. Obsessed with trucks. Calls garbage trucks the loud ones, and tracks their schedule every Tuesday and Friday like it's his personal appointment. I made chicken tacos for dinner that night. His favorite. He sat at the kitchen table, narrating a story about a garbage truck that saved a school bus. I asked follow-up questions. I laughed when he expected me to laugh. None of it was performance. He's my kid. Whatever that test says, he's been my kid for 5 years, and that part isn't moving. But I needed to know the full picture before I did anything else. The next morning, I called a lawyer named Douglas Merritt. A colleague had used him 2 years ago in a difficult divorce. Efficient. No drama. I'd remembered the name. He answered during what sounded like a walk. Traffic in the background. Give me 60 seconds. He said then. Okay, go. I have a paternity test showing my son isn't biologically mine. I have circumstantial evidence pointing to my wife's affair with my best friend. I need to know my rights regarding my son before I do anything else. A pause. How old is the child? 5. How long married? 6 years. Is your name on the birth certificate? Yes. Then in Colorado, you are the legal father. Full stop. That doesn't change unless you petition to have it changed, and even then, courts are reluctant when there's an established parental relationship. Your position is actually stronger than you might think. I exhaled something I hadn't realized I was holding. Can we meet this week? Tomorrow. 3 o'clock. Bring whatever documentation you have. I brought a folder. 47 pages. He looked at it the way I would look at a clean audit trail. Appreciative. You do this for work? Forensic accounting. He set it down. Okay. Here's the landscape. He walked me through everything. Legal paternity, custody considerations, division of assets. Colorado is an equitable distribution state, not 50-50 by default, but by what's fair given the circumstances. Adultery is relevant to the equitable analysis, especially if marital funds were used. I told him about the hotel charge. He wrote something down. That's useful. I drove home. Petra was in the kitchen when I got there. She asked how my day was. I said fine. She said she was thinking of ordering Thai. I said sure. We ate at the kitchen table while Leo told us about his day at kindergarten. Specifically a conflict over who got to be the train conductor during free play. I watched her across the table and tried to find the version of this that made sense. Couldn't. That night after Leo was asleep, I went to the home office and opened the document I'd started 2 days earlier. I added Merritt's notes. Then I opened my work email. 6 months ago my firm's Portland office had reached out about an opening. Senior forensic auditor, managing a small team, Pacific Northwest Territory. I'd shown Petra the email. She'd said it sounded interesting but a big move. I'd let it sit. I forwarded myself the original email to my personal account. Didn't respond yet. Just saved it. Saturday morning I dropped Leo at my parents' place. Told them I had work to catch up on. Which wasn't entirely untrue. My mom hugged him in that way she does, both arms, like she's physically surrounding him with something. He ran straight for the backyard. My dad gave me a look he can always tell when something's off but didn't push. I told him I'd explain later. He nodded. That's enough with him. I drove back home. Petra was at her Saturday yoga class. I had 90 minutes. I went through her phone. I know how that sounds. But I needed to see, not suspect. I needed the complete picture the way I always need the complete picture. The text had been deleted, but the call log hadn't been fully cleared. Asimac's number appeared 31 times over a 14-month window that overlapped with the hotel charge date. Multiple calls between 30 and 60 minutes. Some of them at 10, 11 at night. I photographed the call log with my personal phone. Then I put her phone back exactly where I'd found it, face down on the bathroom counter. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while. The thing about finding evidence in this line of work is that it doesn't usually feel like victory. It feels like paperwork, like you were expecting a number to not add up, and then it doesn't add up. And now you have to figure out what to do with that confirmed number. That's how this felt. When Petra got home I was in the kitchen making lunch. She kissed me on the cheek, asked about the morning. I said quiet. She talking about a woman from her yoga class who was renovating her kitchen. I made the appropriate noises, made sandwiches. The following Thursday, Cormac came for dinner. We'd kept the standing Thursday dinners through everything. Petra cooked pasta. Leo showed Cormac 3 trucks he'd added to his collection since last time. Cormac sat on our living room floor and listened to the full technical specifications of each one. I watched him with Leo that night, really watched. The way he'd sometimes watch Leo walk away toward another room. The expression that crossed his face before he caught himself. I'd seen that expression before, and hadn't known what it was. I knew now. After Leo went to bed, we sat on the back porch with drinks. Petra had excused herself after cleanup. She does that sometimes, gives us space for guy talk. Cormac and I had been alone on this porch 100 times. Talked about his divorce out here, talked about his mom's health scare. Talked about everything. I asked him about work. He talked for a while about a construction project he was managing. Some permit issues upstate. Normal. Easy. Like always. Then I said, the results of Leo's paternity test came back. He went very still. The thing about Cormac is that he's a bad liar in the same specific way a lot of people are. He doesn't lie outright. He asks questions to figure out how much you know. So instead of saying anything, he said, what? Came back through a medical panel. Incidental finding. I kept my voice even. Conversational. 0.0% probability. He put his drink down. Listen, I'm not asking you to explain anything, tonight. I meant it. I already know what happened, I'm telling you so you're aware that I know. He looked at me for a long time. There were a lot of things on his face. I didn't find the one I was looking for, which was I'm sorry. Maybe it was there. Maybe I just couldn't see past the rest of it. Leo, he started, is my son. Legally and in every way that matters I'm handling this. I stood up. I think you should go. He left, didn't try to push past it, which surprised me. Maybe he'd been waiting for this longer than I had. I went inside. Petra was in the living room reading. She looked up. Cormac leave early? Yeah, I said. He had an early morning. I went to bed. Lay there in the dark while she read downstairs. Listened to the house breathe. Refrigerator hum. Street noise through the cracked window. Leo's white noise machine down the hall. I thought about the hotel. Thought about 31 phone calls. Thought about the way Cormac had held Leo in that waiting room. Photo from the night he was born. Face doing something complicated. Thought about what I was going to build instead of what I was leaving. I have a category I use in fraud cases. I call it The known unknown, it's the variable you're aware you don't have clarity on yet. The thing that could change the entire picture. I had one known unknown left. How much Petra knew about whether I knew. How she'd respond when this moved from silent to spoken. I decided to answer that question on my terms. 2 days later, on a Saturday afternoon while Leo was at a birthday party with my parents, I came home, sat across from her at the kitchen table, and told her what I knew. The test, the hotel charge, the call log, the dates. I laid it out the same way I would present findings to a client. No accusation in my voice. Just, here is the documentation. Here is what it shows. She didn't deny it, she cried. Not the kind of crying that asks you to react, the kind that just happens. She sat there for a while not saying anything, then she said, I didn't know how to tell you how long it started. She stopped, started over. Before Leo. It was supposed to be over before Leo. Supposed to be. The hotel, I said. She nodded once. Small. I thought I ended it, it just. She stopped again. I didn't fill the silence, that's another habit from work. People fill silences if you let them. I've regretted it every day, she said. I know that doesn't. It doesn't change the documentation, I said. I'm not saying it to be cruel. I'm saying what's true. She asked what I was going to do. I told her I'd spoken to an attorney. That we were going to separate. That I was applying for a position in Portland. That Leo would come with me initially. And we could work out formal custody from there, based on proximity when she figured out her situation. The color left her face. You can't take him across state lines without. Merritt already advised me on this. I'm the legal parent. He's willing to be reasonable about a custody framework that works for both of us, but Portland is where I'm going. The school district I looked at is excellent. She started crying again. A different kind this time. Please don't do this. We can go to therapy. I'll do whatever. You can be in Leo's life. That's not going away. But I need to not be in the same city as Cormac. I need to not be in a house with you right now. That's not punishment, it's logistics. I meant the logistics part. I wasn't saying it to wound her. She tried for another hour. Different angles. My parents. Our history. What Leo would think. I told her Leo would adapt. Kids are better at that than adults. I told her I'd make the transition as smooth as possible for him, and that my only non-negotiable was that I wasn't staying. When she left to get Leo from my parents' place, I went upstairs. Sat in the home office. Opened my email and responded to the Portland contact from 6 months ago. Asked if the position was still available or if anything comparable had opened. The response came back Monday morning. The original role had been filled, but a supervisory position. Senior team lead, managing 4 junior analysts, had opened 2 weeks prior. Better scope, better title, salary they'd negotiate. Could I do a video call Thursday? I said yes. The call lasted 45 minutes. By the end of it, they asked for references and said they'd be back in touch by end of week. Offer came Friday. I accepted Monday. Start date 6 weeks out. I told Leo we were going on an adventure. New city. Bigger apartment with a balcony where we could watch the street. Oregon had different trucks. Logging trucks, he'd love it. He thought about this, seriously, the way he considers all important information, and then asked whether garbage trucks were different in Oregon too. I told him probably a little different. He said okay. Petra moved into the guest room that week. We operated the house in a kind of careful parallel. Meals for Leo, school pickups, bedtime, without having the same conversations twice. Merritt filed the separation agreement. Cormac sent one text to my personal phone. I'm sorry. I have no excuse. I didn't respond. Added him to a blocked list I was methodically building. My parents took it better than I expected, which meant my dad sat quietly for a long time, and my mom cried and then asked what she could do to help. I told her I needed them to be consistent for Leo. That was the most important thing. She said of course. Of course. My mom's brother lives outside Portland, as it happens. Not close. An hour and a half south, but existing family on that side of the country, which helped with the optics of the relocation for the custody paperwork. Merritt handled the legal side like surgery. Clean cuts, clean margins. Colorado courts take established parental relationships seriously. My name on the birth certificate, 5 years of documented involvement, the move tied to a genuine job opportunity. It held up. Petra's attorney pushed back on some of the asset division. I'd already documented the hotel charge as use of marital funds. That particular argument didn't gain traction. The SUS sold in 3 weeks. Denver market. We split the equity. I put Leo's share in a 5/29 college savings account the day the wire cleared. The math worked out better than I expected, partly because I'd been the one tracking our finances and knew exactly what was in each account. We drove to Portland on a Tuesday in October. Leo fell asleep outside of Boise and woke up when we crossed the state line. Asked how much longer, fell back asleep. I drove the last leg in the quiet, radio low. His white noise app playing from the back seat through a little Bluetooth speaker. I'd found a rental in Northeast Portland. Good school district. Close to a park with a climbing structure Leo had already studied extensively on Google Maps. The apartment had a small balcony that looked out over a tree-lined street. First night I set up his corner of the bedroom with his familiar things. His truck bins, his stuffed polar bear, the particular arrangement of books he likes by the bed. He walked around the apartment doing an inspection. Which is what he does in new places. And then he said, "I like the balcony." I said, "Me too, bud." He asked about the garbage trucks. I said we'd have to check the schedule. He thought this was reasonable and went to brush his teeth. The first month was hard in the way. First months are new routines, new commute, new coworkers, Leo's adjustment to a new school with a new teacher and no familiar faces. He cried one night about his friend Briggs, who he'd been close to since preschool. I sat on the edge of his bed and didn't try to fix it, just sat there, and eventually he said, "I think Briggs might visit someday." I said I thought that was probably true. He seemed satisfied with that and went to sleep. By week 4, he'd started talking about a kid named Marco in his class. By week 6, he'd been to Marco's house twice, and Marco had been to ours once. By week 8, they were apparently in the middle of a shared project involving toy trucks and some kind of fictional highway system that required frequent in-person planning sessions. Crisis managed. Kids are better at this than adults. My new position was the right level of challenging. 4 junior analysts, overlapping case files, a team dynamic that had gone a little slack before I arrived. Not dramatically, they were good at the work, just no one had been pushing for efficiency. I didn't say much about it initially, just started doing the work and delivering clean outputs on compressed timelines. My manager called me in after the first month close. "Your file completion rate is 20% above what we had last quarter." She looked at the numbers. "What did you change?" I redistributed the case assignments by analyst strength, instead of alphabetical rotation. And I stopped the status meeting on Wednesdays. It was taking 40 minutes to cover information that could be a 2-paragraph email. She stared at me for a moment. How did no one catch that? It's hard to see your own inefficiencies from inside them. She nodded slowly. "Keep doing what you're doing." Petra called when she could. Video calls with Leo, usually on Sundays. He would hold trucks up to the camera and narrate. She'd laugh, ask questions, be fully present. Whatever she did, she's still his mother and she showed up to those calls. I'll give her that. She didn't ask to move to Portland. She had her job, her family, her life in Denver. That was its own answer. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday in January. Merritt's email was 2 lines. "Decree issued. You're done. Take care of yourself and that kid." I typed back thank you and went to pick Leo up from school. He came out with a painting, green and blue swirls, that he told me was a Pacific Ocean tornado, a concept he'd invented that week. I told him it was scientifically interesting. He said he knew. We went for pizza. He got a root beer, which is a special occasion thing. He asked if we could go see the big bridge this weekend. I said absolutely. The blocked call log on my old number. I'd kept it active for 3 months, redirected to voicemail. Reached 40-something attempts before I let the number lapse in February. I checked it exactly twice. Cormac's number appeared a handful of times. Petra's, a few times in the first month, before the calls stopped. After that, only the regulars. My parents-in-law, who I'd always liked and still felt quietly bad about. A couple of shared friends who probably didn't fully know what had happened. I didn't call any of them back. Some bridges are load-bearing and some of them are just spans you cross once on your way to where you're going. Spring brought a promotion. The firm restructured its Pacific Northwest division and created a regional auditing director role. My manager recommended me in March. The position was confirmed in April. New salary, 6 direct reports, oversight across 3 state territories. I've spent my career being good at finding what's hidden. Turns out I'm also good at building teams around that same principle. Find the truth, document it cleanly, don't editorialize. Leo turned 6 in May. I rented the park pavilion near our apartment. Marco's family came, 3 other kids from his class, my uncle from down south who drove up for it, the neighbor family from the 2nd floor who'd sort of adopted us into their regular weekend orbit. Leo wore his birthday crown from school and ran between groups of people in that way little kids do when they're in the exact center of everything they love. I stood by the grill flipping burgers and watched him. He'd grown an inch since October. Lost his first tooth in February, an event he'd treated with extreme seriousness and documented via several photographs. He had a favorite teacher, a best friend, a garbage truck schedule memorized for 6 surrounding blocks, and a balcony he considered his personal observatory. This was the life, not the one I'd planned. The one I built when the plan stopped being true. A text came in while I was cleaning up after the party. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. I stared at it. I deleted it without reading it. Maybe that seems cold. Maybe it is. But I've been in enough investigations to know that reopening a closed case never goes the way people expect it to. The evidence doesn't change. Numbers don't re-add. You're just reopening something that was cleanly closed, and all you get for it is paperwork and disruption. I don't need the disruption. I had Leo help me carry the folding tables back upstairs. He narrated the whole trip. 2nd floor is boring, 3rd floor is also boring, 4th floor is where we live, which is the good floor. We dropped the tables in the storage closet. He immediately asked about ice cream. I said yes. We walked to the place 3 blocks away. The one with the small chalkboard menu that changes weekly. He ordered something called a brown butter honeycomb scoop, and studied it with intense focus before deciding it was good. We sat at the outside table and watched the street. A recycling truck turned the corner. Leo went completely still. Dad, he said in the tone he reserves for significant observations. That's a different recycling truck than we usually get. I looked. It was in fact a different recycling truck. You're right, I said. He considered this development for a long moment, then took another bite of his ice cream. I'm going to add it to my list. He has a list. In a composition notebook from his school supplies. Trucks he's seen, trucks he's documented, trucks still wants to see. It is a detailed and living document. I looked at this kid across the table, ice cream on his chin, completely absorbed in the serious business of being six. And I thought about what we'd left behind and what we'd built, and whether those were even the right categories. Maybe it wasn't about leaving and building. Maybe it was just about looking clearly at what was real. And adjusting accordingly. That's all forensic accounting actually is. Find the truth in the numbers. Don't confuse what you wanted the numbers to say with what they say. Adjust accordingly. The numbers said Leo is mine. The numbers said Denver was finished. The numbers said Portland was the right kind of new. The adjustment is ongoing. That's fine. I'm good at adjustments. On the walk home, Leo asked whether we could get a dog. I said we'd have to think about it. He said he'd already thought about it, and the answer was yes. I told him that was not how that worked. He was quiet for a block. Then, what if the dog liked trucks? I told him I'd look into it. He seemed to consider this a reasonable concession and didn't push further. We walked home in the early May evening. The sky that particular color it gets on the Pacific side when the light comes in low and warm. Leo held my hand for a block, then let go to look at something, then took it again. The way 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, as of today, do, on and off in and out, not because they need to hold on but because they're still deciding when they need to and when they don't. I let him decide. That's the job now. Not the fraud cases, not the team, not the salary or the title or the clean break I built from a DA printout and 47 pages of documentation. The job is this. The ice cream and the trucks and the composition notebook and the handheld and then let go and then held again. They wanted me to keep quiet. To absorb the information and continue as a family and act that like what I found didn't mean what it meant, because that was easier for everyone else. What they didn't account for was that I'm a person who builds cases for a living. Once the evidence is in, the case is the case. You don't unsee a number. I saw the number. I built accordingly. We're still building. That's enough.